If you told me like the winner of this game has 20 goals, I'd be very surprised. If you told me the winner had 15, I'd say if you give me like a band, I would say the most like likely outcome is right around like 12 goals. This feels a lot like the 2023 game, the game 2 years ago to me. The one Notre Dame won, though we're still contesting it. In the court system. Notre Dame won 13-12. That feels like right about where it's at for me. And then there's like a second band of like at like 9-ish. And then you're like third and fourth, like, unlikely outcomes, but there's a possibility of it are this game is like an old school Notre Dame, Maryland.
5-4.
Maybe like till 7-6 or a maybe 15-14-ish. I cannot see a crazy like 18-17 would feel insane. And or I would say actually I can't see 18-17 and I can't see like 5-4. I can see most likely is like 13-12. Next most likely is like 10, like maybe like 8. I don't know, but I'm not sure what to. There is I think an air of anticipation certainly, but I think both these teams bring. I do think both these teams still bring a little unknown into this game, which makes it exciting. Exciting. Number 1 versus number 2, 1 p.m. Eastern. I went to the last number 1 versus number 2 that Maryland was in. The second to last number 1 versus number 2 regular season is kind of when we say number 1 versus number 2, it's always kind of what I think of. I don't really count NCAA tournament matchups within those because it's just a different deal. The last one was Duke and Notre Dame. We had quite a few of these now lately. This is 4 of the last 5 seasons in which we've had a number 1 versus number 2 game. The last one and Maryland and Notre Dame have featured in the last 3, and they have featured in 5 of the last 6. It kind of gives you just an idea of the consistency and the kind of elite stature that these programs are reaching. Last one was number 1 Duke versus number 2 Notre Dame. I believe that was at Arlotta on April 8th, 2023. Notre Dame won 17-12. That was a preview of the national championship that season, which Notre Dame would obviously win for their first title. Both teams had obviously missed the NCAA tournament the season prior, quite famously. Both, interestingly, about that one is of the games that I've found, I went back to about 2012. I think in terms of just like within the last like 15 or so years, the other one that I didn't before 2012, I think I think there was a Meadowlands number 1 versus number 2. Involving, I want to say, it was Big City Classic. Is the other one I'm thinking of? Yes, 2010 Virginia versus Carolina. What is the other one that we can add to our list here? That was that the one to Ryan? I think Ryan might have went to. I think Ryan went to the first one, which was 2009. This was 2010, which was number 1 Virginia versus number 2 North Carolina at the Big City Classic in up at the That one would have been the no. I think Ryan did go to this one because Ryan said he went to the first one was at Giants Stadium. The second one, which was this one, 2010. The second one was at when they opened MetLife Stadium. So I think Ryan actually did go to this one. And Virginia UNC. Virginia was coming into this game at a record of 10-0. They would lose the next week to say who do you think they lost to? They lost unshockingly to Duke after Virginia went 16-2 in 2010, and both of their losses were to Duke. No, sorry, they actually yes, but they did beat Duke. That was the one time they beat Duke. They beat Duke in the ACC championship.
Not really season.
And then Carolina that year, 13-3. In 2010, going into that game was this is just one game I'm trying to. That was there for Carolina was also 10-0. So interestingly, the last one, Duke and Notre Dame, is the only number 1 versus number 2 game in which both teams had a loss, or either team had a loss going in. Otherwise, or at least back to 2010. So those kind of the ones we have. So there's been plenty prior to that, but that's just kind of the ones we're going back to. That makes sense because it's the one that I would say of all the ones I remember. They're actually the other one we'll get to. Of the ones that we've kind of tracked here, it's the one I feel like had the least kind of big buzz. It did have buzz. That's right. I would say second least. Definitely there was a big buzz because of the missing the tournament factor. Prior, and but both teams missed the tournament. Now they were number 1 versus number 2, and they were the favorites for the title that go around. But both having a loss, I think, maybe put a different kind of point on it compared to the usual number 1 versus number 2 matchups where they're undefeated. Though it was later in the season, whereas as you can see, all number 1 versus number 2. Aside from Big City Classic and that one, are usually in March. March is usually the point at which they occur. I was at the one in 2022. It was Maryland versus Virginia, March 19th. A beautiful day in D.C. Me and Safe did like a 10-year-long Homer epic poem podcast on it.
This is a love letter to both programs.
Indeed. A love letter to Lacrosse, really. It was a rematch of the 2021 national championship, which we might need to do like a watch along.
I think you reached a higher plane of like McConaughey at the end of like you're loving it. I never saw you so happy in my life.
I was seeing everything, man. 2022 rematch of the national championship 2021. We might do like a rewatch of that 2021 national championship at some point. Part on that. It was the third a preview of the quarterfinals. Those teams would meet in the playoffs. To be the third playoff meeting in a row in 22 that year. Both teams were 6-0. Maryland wins 23-12. Amazing day in DC. Great atmosphere. Being in the neutral site, great crowd, 10,000. Maryland crowd, the Virginia definitely had their who's always traveled well. Brett Maycar scored like a pole goal in the second quarter. I levitated. I'll be interested. That's why I think this one's exciting. To me is I always kind of talk about this. This is exactly the occasion to play like a neutral site sort of game. Regular season, number 1 versus number 2. You want to take the game, let's grow the game. But it's been cold. Take it, where it'll be warm. And it gives it, I do think it gives the game an additional gravitas to it. This one will be in even a bigger stadium, down at Bobby Dodd Stadium, which seats, like, I think, 50, 55,000. So in that sense, it'll be a little. Audi Field was real nice, kind of more intimate, because like it was probably like 50% full, 10,000. That'll be more like Final Four kind of, I guess, vibe, where it's be spaced out. But I do anticipate hopefully a nice crowd. We'll see what they get, but I think it'll be. I do think the neutral site for a game like this does give it a different feel, vibe. Maybe NCAA tournament kind of feel to it, for this game, similar to Carolina and Virginia had that back in 2010. So this game has that added element to it, as well. I think that's pretty cool. But I was at that game. Was a really cool occasion, and I enjoyed a lot. But Maryland definitely came in with a, kind of, as you could tell, after the national championship loss, they had that one on their radar. I don't think it'll be the same this Saturday to the same degree. It's just a different vibe. That one was that national championship was those teams traded haymakers for 4 quarters. It was Maryland lost the undefeated season. Maryland last year was that team just squeezed all the juice out of the lemon. Notre Dame was Notre Dame. So I don't think it'll be the same. But these are two teams who have played a lot. They're very familiar with each other. There's definitely a rivalry. It's a rivalry. Not Maryland Hopkins, Maryland Virginia, Hopkins Virginia, Syracuse Virginia. Not that kind of rivalry, but it is a rivalry, I think.
I would posit that it's not Virginia, Maryland, but I think for Irish fans, Notre Dame, I think there's weird interconference things, and maybe they feel more with Duke, and there's the history that there's been so many different conferences. There's rivalries with a lot of teams, but I do feel heat in this rivalry with Maryland more so than just any other like regular season game. Like almost like I think that they want to beat you guys more than I think Maryland. So Maryland's is like, all right, you're just on the list. We're gonna play. Maybe there's a little bit like given the fact there's 3 losses in a row to Notre Dame, who was in the national championship. Maybe there's gonna be a little more edge, but I think Maryland, they're like, we know who our rivals is, and maybe most Maryland fans probably they put Syracuse higher than they would.
I think that dynamic's flipped. I think Maryland now, having lost to them,
that's what I'm saying. Like I think it's grown, and I think for a little while it bothered Notre Dame fans.
Yes,
there was a 6-7 year stretch where it was like I think they won twice, but like and then don't forget the Notre Dame won, and then it was like kind of a bugaboo for Maryland, and Maryland like beat them. I remember like the quarterfinal game in 2021.
Where Notre Dame didn't sell tickets and then let all the fans in anyway.
It was like it's just like I never there was definitely like some heat in that game. Again from the Notre Dame side, like they definitely wanted to beat Maryland, and then it didn't happen. So as I'm saying, I don't know where like you are a Maryland fan, obviously. Or the average Maryland fan would put, but I think this is slowly rising to top 5-ish, top maybe 3 rivalry for Maryland.
For Maryland fans, I think it's. Well, see, the thing is, for Maryland fans, I would say it's not gonna. I don't say not. I don't know where it doesn't crack the. For Maryland fans, it's Hopkins and then it's Virginia, and that's really the list. And then for the old timers, Navy, which has unfortunately lost its place in the kind of circle there. And then for my kind of a little older than me, there's the Duke game, which Notre Dame, I think for maybe a newer group of people, might, I guess, replace the Duke game to a certain. But the thing is,
I think the further you get from the ACC, the less attenuated.
The thing is, I don't think Notre Dame will ever replace the Duke game. I don't know.
There's something about Maryland people and UND like alums that Duke is a. I've been to plenty of Maryland games. My best friend went to Maryland. I love the Terps, but I know I've been at Allen College Park during a Duke-ish game, and it's like it's another level.
Here's the thing I'll put it. You could Maryland and Notre Dame could, like, in any sport. It's you saw it last year when Maryland beat Duke in the tournament, and it's like Maryland could play and develop a rivalry with any team, and it would be like, wow, this is heated. It's like this is kind of like their new rival, and that can be true. And then I promise you, if Maryland plays Duke in the in March Madness this year in the tournament, you will see a level of hatred that is like you don't quite understand. Like Maryland Duke, the hatred Maryland fans have for Duke is the kind that gets people to actually write columns in the newspaper about whether this is too profane.
This is getting too heated. Yeah,
that's what it is. So, but what I'll say is that within the program, and now within the program, what they'll say is every game's important, and it is. And I don't think within the program they make one game bigger than. I don't think they outwardly make one game bigger than the other. I don't think they go outwardly say, "Oh, it's Notre Dame week," same with Notre Dame. I don't think Notre Dame. I think these programs are very similar, very, very similar. I think we'll get to that when we kind of talk about the matchup. I don't think with Notre Dame is outwardly saying "Oh, it's Maryland," but I think the way that they approach how they prepare for it, how they maybe motivate the players. Within the program, because the guys who go through the program, Maryland's played Duke 3 times in the last 10 years. Maryland plays Notre Dame every year. Within the program, I think Notre Dame is now the number 3 game.
Yeah.
So that's the difference. Is within the program if you're a Maryland alum of the last, I mean, unless you're even Rambo played Duke once, so you got to go back to Tillman's first 1 or 2 classes for guys who really, the first Tillman couple classes, those guys beat Duke twice in the Final Four. Other than that, it's Cottle's guys. That's a long time ago. But it's recent guys who played Notre Dame in the NCAA tournament in the 21 game, or obviously now that. So I think, within the program, Notre Dame has become the number 3 game. And within the program, I think I imagine it has a very similar dynamic to the Virginia game. I think where the Virginia game separates itself is the fans. For the fans, the Virginia game is, and the alums, the Virginia game is different. For the players and the coaches, I think the Virginia game and Notre Dame game are probably very similar. It's non-conference. They recruit kind of like recruiting battles, pretty, similar. Like they recruit some of the same players, not all. The the only game where I think everyone kind of knows, fans like understand, the Hopkins game is the one that really, within everyone has a clear, obviously, different degree of, like magnified, obviously. The Virginia game, because I think within fans and alums, you know, and the Virginia game became big, obviously, because the fans, and then but like the way those two teams played each other, it then obviously elevated within that. And Maryland Notre Dame is kind of taking on that characteristic as well. A couple more of these number one, number two games: Duke and Carolina in the COVID year 2021. This is the one that I always kind of forget about. I think it's just the nature of that season. This is the Sowers game, isn't it?
Yeah.
The one time Sowers kind of like put Duke on his back. Won it for them. Duke was 9-0. Carolina was 7-0. Duke wins 12-11. Go ahead.
Everyone predicted this was the national championship final. And
yeah, both teams lost, and then in the Final Four. Maybe this one might be the most forgotten. This one I always remember, and I guess maybe the reason I always remember is just because Maryland lost. If we had won, I might not remember as much. For other people, this might be the more forgotten one. March 10th, 2018, number 1 Maryland versus number 2 Albany. Albany wins 11-10. TD basically puts Albany on his back, wins like every fourth quarter faceoff, and Albany comes from 3 or 4 goals down in the fourth quarter win. This was a rematch of the previous season's quarterfinal. Albany makes the fourth quarter comeback. This is obviously the Great Danes' Final Four year. Maryland goes to the Final Four as well this year in 2018. This was at the time thought maybe it could be a national championship kind of rematch, but then Big Ben Reeves and Yale had other plans that year. And then Duke also made the championship that year. Another Notre Dame number 1 versus number 2 game, March 2016. Remember this one? It was a Sunday nighter. March 2016, number 1 Denver, number 2 Notre Dame. Denver wins in OT. I always remember this one because it was a rematch of the Final Four from the previous season, and how absolutely identical it is to that Final Four game. The Final Four game, Denver has the big lead over Notre Dame, and Notre Dame creeps back in with the big Sergio Perkovic push in that fourth quarter, but Denver wins in OT. This one, Denver has a big lead. It's pouring down rain, and Notre Dame makes a huge comeback. They score like 4 goals in 30 seconds or something. And then Denver still wins in OT again. Zach Miller, the old Zach Miller, one of the forgotten man, the all-time great Denver middies, scored in OT. I remember at that point, Denver felt like they were unstoppable. Or they won the title. They were number 1. It felt like Denver was just going to go on a run and kind of like rip off one or a couple more titles there with Tierney. And didn't happen. Neither of these teams wound up making the Final Four that year. Denver lost to Towson in round 1, and Notre Dame lost in the quarterfinals to Joe Bresci's alone Carolina national championship team. And then so we already did the North Carolina one in 2010. March 24th, 2012. One of the final high points of the Dave Petramala era. I'll let you take it away.
It was great. Hopkins had actually pretty strong season in 2021. Failed in the quarters to make the Final Four, but 2012 was like, this is it. The Hopkins back, after winning the title in 07 last and making the title game in 08, they were kind of in the wilderness, getting blown out of Virginia, I think, in that 09 final, I think it's a quarterfinal, and then Duke the next year after. So 2011, 2012 were, important years for Petra to kind of bring the program back. And they kind of had the stage set for, again, not official back, status, but like being a team to be reckoned with by going down to Charlottesville, playing the number one Virginia Caps, defending national champs. And it was electric. It was like Klockner when Klockner's still hot now under Lars, but Klockner. I mean, we didn't get the TV access and the streamed access as we do now, but Klockner under Starja, it was a tough place to play.
It was the Lions' Den, man.
It was, and it was just that game. You could just like feel it, and the ratings backed it up. It was the most watched ESPN lacrosse game on ESPN on any of their platforms. And I remember the press release about that. They were like, of any game at any time. So that included Final Four, championship games, any other like Big Ten regular season games. It was a thing. This game
still might be the most watched regular season game.
I know. Yeah, no one's ever like said, "Oh, it was the new number one." And obviously the population's grown significantly since 2012, so you would think eventually it would cross over. But
they've topped it, I'm sure, for like playoff Final Four championship games. But regular season games
still may sold the crown, so still probably like a high number even compared to tournament games. But yeah, it was a big game. It was great. I believe Brannigan scored in overtime.
Yep.
Yeah. Hopkins came out picture. Obviously, didn't go as planned in terms of like making the Final Four that year, but it was a return trip to Hopkins to be a number one team in the country in the regular season. So, yeah, that was a big game. I loved it.
Yeah. So the last of these number one versus number two games, the last four have featured a team get to the Final Four. The last four three of the last four, both teams have made it, and in the other one, Maryland and Virginia played in the quarterfinals. 2016, Denver and Notre Dame both did not make it. In 2012, Virginia and Hopkins both did not make it. Other common Maryland, Virginia, Maryland, Albany, Denver, Notre Dame, Virginia, Hopkins, all had the previous year's national championship winner in them, and two, Maryland, Virginia, and then now Maryland, Notre Dame with a national championship rematch. So this one's interesting. It's kind of Maryland and Virginia a couple years ago. Like we had that like date circled. Felt like just like we put it on like the calendar, put the pin in it, and it's like, all right, this one's kind of snuck up on us a little bit. Notre Dame, I think everyone expected to be in this spot, but Maryland getting through their month of February the way they have, I don't think people expected that. Even though they have, last year they did go 4-0 in the month of February, and then after they went to Arlada, and Notre Dame jumped on them early and kind of got off the rails. And then after that, Maryland season never really got back on the rails until the tournament. They played Brown the next week, escaped by a goal. They lost to Virginia at home. They were down huge to Penn State, escaped with a win, lost to Michigan. It was just, this was where their season got off the rails. So I still think there is a degree of, for Maryland, it's kind of what I talk about unknown. This is the game where it's, if Maryland wins this game, it's all right. They're the number one team in the country. And you can never say Maryland is back. Like, because Maryland never goes away. But I do think there will be a feeling of, all right, like the last couple of years, the offense, they've had to grind it out, and there is still a grind out kind of feel. But they will be number one, and it'll be everyone's chasing Maryland again. Will be the theme and narrative on Monday morning if they win this game. And that can very change. I mean, they'll have a Delaware opponent after that. They'll still have to play Virginia, which will be tough, and then Big Ten play will certainly be a gauntlet. Things can change very quickly in lacrosse, as we know. If they lose in similar way to they did last year, I think there'll kind of be a feeling of, let's see how this March goes, and let's see how different this team really is. For Notre Dame, I think they are the hunted. Everyone's chasing Notre Dame, and until proven otherwise, everyone is still going to be chasing Notre Dame until someone gives someone a reason to not be chasing. Maryland winning this would be okay. Maybe we're chasing Maryland for now. If they can beat Notre Dame, be the first one to beat them in, since Georgetown last year. Notre Dame's gone over a calendar year without a loss now. Can someone give us a reason to be chasing someone other than Notre Dame? But if not, everyone's gonna be chasing Notre Dame until then. But had to go on the road to Georgetown, first game outdoors, and they got pushed. They gave a big punch to Georgetown, and Georgetown punched right back. 6-0 start for Notre Dame. Georgetown scores 6 back. Notre Dame goes up 9-6. Georgetown pushes it to 9-8, and then they hung in there. And so there's still some questions for Notre Dame, certainly. I think that's the intriguing thing about this contest is I think there's enough questions about both teams to where it's number 1 versus number 2, and it's a neutral site game, and it's a national championship rematch, and it's the last 3 national championship winners in these two teams. It's the two perennial, kind of like programs right now. Of this, this kind of time period, and Virginia's kind of off in the, they got kind of problems you're figuring out. So when you're talking right now, when you're talking the Titans right now, or the Gods, these are it. So that gives it gravitas, and that gives it stakes, and that gives it everything we love in a big time regular season college lacrosse game. That everything you could want. But when it comes to the matchup on the field, there's I don't know. There's not Pat Cavanaugh. There's not Logan Wisnauskas. There's not Ajax Zapatello. There's not Luke Weirman. There's not some other Chris Fag back there. There's some other of these guys there's no Liam Entenman. There's also the other guys for Notre Dame with both these teams that leave it a little. No Eric Dobson. There's question marks that leave it open for interpretation.
I mean, I'm looking forward to it. I think.
100%. That's exciting.
Oh no, it's been I think it's going to be, probably closer than the national championship game. It's hopefully for the viewers, but yeah, I think you're right because both teams are still kind of finding themselves a little bit to an extent. But I think Maryland is getting increasingly confident, with the way they're playing. The Syracuse win was, impressive with them. I think Notre Dame, didn't nothing to be ashamed about by beating Georgetown by a couple goals. Was a road game early in the season. But I think Maryland is kind of just showing, with their product and the wins that they have on their schedule, they're playing, not to their absolute potential, but this is, going to be kind of a challenge for the Irish to keep that streak going. Not that they're, definitely going to beat the Terps, but I don't know, just the Richmond game, Syracuse, Princeton, 2 games on the road. I think his boys are going to be. Oh no, the Syracuse game was home. Sorry, but the Loyola game on the road was still pretty, daunting. Just playing at Ridley, we saw it through pretty much 52 minutes of the game. Maryland wasn't really doing anything offensively. So I think they're kind of road proven, and I don't know. I mean, we'll do it at Pick'em, maybe kind of move to that one shortly. But yeah, I think Maryland's feeling good going into this one.
I think both teams. I think both teams have reason for optimism. And I think both teams have, kind of there's some question marks as well. I don't think the championship says a lot about this game, really. That game, Maryland was obviously you could get a read for that right away. Maryland was which like look, I mean that's the championship. If you don't have if you don't got the gas in the tank, and your opponent does, see you later. And so it was pick your poison. They either had to let Notre Dame run by them, or they had to slide and then let Notre Dame pick them apart. And additionally, McNaney made, I think, like 2 saves. I want to say, and I don't even really think a lot of it was his fault. But I don't think he can play much worse in this game. I do think there's some aspects of how Notre Dame plays that make them a tough matchup for him. But I think he's going to play better in this one. So overall, it's that kind of pick your poison element isn't there. Just 2 different teams. Maryland, on the flip side for Notre Dame, they're going to say, hey, the one thing we didn't do well in the championship was face-offs, and there's no Luke Weirman. And Luke Weirman, and I always had Will Lynch's number. Will Lynch can be happy to see someone else out there. Maryland's obviously done well in face-offs this year, but that's, if Notre Dame can have that edge, Will Lynch has had a really good start to the year, did really well against Georgetown last weekend. That'll be something to monitor. If any team can get headwind in the specialty areas in this game, I think it could be big. Both teams have had a lot of success there to start the year. Thomas Ricciardelli looks like the next great Notre Dame goalie, having a really strong start to the year. Had a strong game, saved north of 60% against Georgetown. Did take a penalty, maybe something to monitor, but he's started really well. Lynch earning that preseason All-American rep. Colin Hackstrom kind of reserve. Both teams have been using 2 face-off men. Talking about how these teams are similar. Both teams have been using 2 face-off men. Maryland has Keither and Crater. So there's not a decided kind of edge there. I guess if you had to lean one way from face-offs, you would lean to Notre Dame. And if you did, because of Lynch has the experience, then on the flip side, if you had to lean one way from goal, you'd lean to Maryland because McNaney has the experience.
This would be his 7th game against him because he was on that 2020 team.
His first win, I believe, was against Notre Dame. His first career win, McNaney, I believe, is against Notre Dame. Yeah. So the way McNaney, I think he struggles is kind of guys kind of crossing sort of he's very good low, but I think when guys kind of cross the middle of the field or shooters kind of turning, cutting from behind the cage and kind of shooting over their shoulder, some of these shots, either kind of turning, kind of cutting across the middle, shooting low, or kind of cutting upfield from around the cage. Some of these shots kind of give him some trouble, McNaney a little bit, and that Notre Dame does a lot of that. So I think that could be some trouble, areas for him. But he's looked very good to start the year. So either team gets headwind in the specialty areas. McNaney has a big day, 60-65%. Lynch has a big day, 65% faces. I think you could say that could be it. On the flip side, Notre Dame did have a big day there and on against Georgetown, and it was still a close game. Part of that was because we talked about it on the Power Hour. Georgetown dominated Notre Dame on ground balls. 38-19 in non-face-off ground balls. I think 40-27 overall. That's something to monitor. That's Notre Dame's thing, is the ground ball game. The Kavanaughs obviously for so many years got racked up so many ground balls. The way they ride you so hard. so many ground balls. That's their identity. I was kind of wondering, when's the last time Notre Dame really lost the ground ball battle like that? That'll be interesting. Kind of part of the game to monitor is the ground ball factor. How's the Notre Dame ride? With Maryland's been a very good clearing so far. How is the Notre Dame ride with just Chris Kavanaugh? And he's got Corney now with him. Obviously, still Jake Taylor, but a freshman now in there with him, and not Pat Kavanaugh. Last year, the first sign we had, remember with McNaney struggled with the clearing, was in that game. Notre Dame just ate him up. He was hearing footsteps. They gave him hell. How does that appear this year? Maryland had moments where they thought they looked like they could get back in that game, and McNaney really struggled. That's an interesting element in this game. I think to me, it really comes down to this game. I would probably say midfield on both ends. I think both teams attack close defense. I just think they're both really strong. It's both teams' close defenses are just really strong. Notre Dame is breaking in 2 new poles. Schwitzenberg and Gallagher. Georgetown did target Schwitzenberg a little bit and had some success. Maybe that's an area Maryland might go to. But Sean Light, you're not getting anywhere on him. Who does he take? Probably Urksa, maybe, because that feels like the speed. On the flip side, though, it's if you are breaking in 2 new poles and Urksa against the newer pole, that might be a green light for Urksa. But then you probably put Donovan on Urksa. That might be what they do. Light on Urksa, and then Donovan on Spanos is probably what I could see them doing. But also, it's Notre Dame. They never mind matchups. They're kind of comfortable. But that's something that's interesting is the last couple of years, Notre Dame not caring about matchups and just kind of feeling like, okay, we can switch everything and we're cool, hasn't been a weakness for them because they have had 4th and 5th year seniors at every spot. This year, it's a little new. It's new faces. How does that change things? I think is an interesting dilemma. I still overall would say, and then I'll flip, Chris Cav on Schaller. Will Schaller's been great so far. Another great game against Princeton last week. I mean, he dominated against Princeton. Great against Joey Spallina. He's been great so far. Chris Kavanaugh will be his toughest matchup, his toughest assignment of the year. I think he'll do well, though. Overall, elsewhere, those Maryland is just so deep at pole. They've got him, Jackson Canfield, Colin Burlace. All those guys returned last year. They go 2 deep with 2 strong long stick middies. Jack McDonald, who came back for the Cuse game. He racked up 7 ground balls in the Princeton game. AJ Larkin he's a menace. Some scooping up ground balls. He can push transition. They play pure leg freshman. Maryland's got 6 really good poles. So you're not getting much on their pole. So I really think it's about the midfield on both sides. Notre Dame's still got a bunch of really good midfielders. Angrick, Jalen Seymour, God, that kid can shoot the ball. He took the net off a couple times against Georgetown. Faison scores his first goal. He's come back into it. How do they mix him in? Do they run him out of the box with the first midfield or the second midfield? If they run him out of the box with the second midfield, you're probably going to get a shorty on a really good, a shorty's going to be matched up on a really good, midfielder. That's tricky. That's just kind of a game within the game kind of deal. Finley, all these guys, Booz and Kill. So Maryland is really deep at shorty. Maryland's been running 5 shorties so far this year. Strength on strength. Notre Dame's deep on offensive midi. Maryland's deep at defensive midi. Can Maryland's offensive middies can Maryland's defensive middies hold up? Notre Dame always does a great job against Maryland at two-man games, picks, finding ways to create separation for guys. They know just a little bit. I don't think in the last couple of years, I don't think there's been anybody in the country who recruits more. We talked about this with Wojcik when Chris Wojcik when we did the pod with him, and we asked him about this, like what their recruiting philosophy, how they recruit guys, and he kind of hedged on it, didn't he? And he said it's not like we're specifically looking for Dodgers, we're specifically looking for this type of guy. But I don't know. I watch them and I see the rosters, and I don't think there's anyone else in the country year after year who has more athletes on offense. Just dudes who run by you than they do. Every year, like there might be teams who have more guys who have better stick skills. Like Syracuse has more guys than Notre Dame who have better stick skills. Like this, like Ryan always, Ryan, the Ryan, was like killing him. Like Syracuse has more guys on offense who have better stick skills than Notre Dame. 100%. Every guy on Syracuse's offense, aside from like Taylor, had better stick skills than every guy on Notre Dame. But you know what? Almost every guy on Notre Dame's offense does better than every guy on Syracuse's offense. They run by their guy. Like these, like they run by the other dude, and it's like it's just down the line every year with the Notre Dame dudes, and it's you run through their stat sheet, and it's just a 2024. It's just a collection of dudes who at midfield. 11 goals, 13 goals, 17 goals, 22 goals, 9 goals, 8 goals. 2023, 16 goals, 16 goals, 14 goals, 13 goals, 13 goals. That's 5 guys with 13 or more goals. Only one of them had 10 plus assists. 2022. Dobson 20 goals, Jacoboy 17 goals, Meyer 10 goals, Angrick, 8 goals. Even going back to, like it's every year, it's just dudes who score 11, 12, 13, 14 goals. What are these guys' assignments? Run by your guy. Like they just have a collection of these dudes who are really fast and are really good dodgers. Now, to be fair, we see this offense sometimes when they don't have a Kavanaugh. Like 2019, what happens, when this offense, when they don't have a Kavanaugh? Like Brian Costabile, he scored 42 goals that year. But that offense's leading assister that year had 13 assists. That's the offense when they don't have a Kavanaugh. Like no one really, the Kavanaugh puts it all together. This the straw, they have the straw that stirs the drink, They need the Kavanaugh to kind of put it all together. But when they have the Kavanaugh to put it all together, it's just everyone else, you got one run by your dude. And it makes them so hard because they put dudes out there who can run by, and they're so hard to defend because every guy who's out there is fast and he's big, and you're defending against everyone.
Cavs, the Reggie Jackson of Lacrosse. Strawberry stirs the drink.
It's go ahead.
I do want to correct one thing. This is Big Mac's 6th game. He got injured in 2023 against Loyola, so this will be the 7th game total because Brian Rupel was playing that one. Who was being mercilessly yelled at? I told you, heckled a little bit by some Princeton fan towards the second half. It was kind of a weird scene. You're right. I mean, no amount, not to degenerate the game, but no amount of stick skills is overcompensating. Is more important than just being able to get separation. Yes. I think it's like if you can separate from your man or just blow by him, it's just so much easier because it causes the slide. you get the pass, and then you just get one more. So yeah, at the end of the day, if you want stick skills or separation, go for the guy who dodge his way to the goal.
Yeah, they recruit. That's the thing. To me, it feels like it's intentional. It's like how do it? Like they recruit athletes. They go, we want athletes.
That was a dumb sergeant, and to an extent, Bresci's strategy. Well, Sargent for sure. It was just like, I just want the best guys, and I'll teach them. How to move around on the lacrosse field.
And Tillman's had that a lot. Tillman's had a lot too. From it's like, I'll give me athletes, and I'll worry about the rest later. And that's what always makes this great matchup. Is Maryland usually always has the deepest set of defensive midfielders they'll face. So when they match up against the Poles, it's always, how do we get a pick here, and how do we create, how do we get them matched up, get them separation somewhere? How do we get them matched up on maybe the one shorty we want, so that we can get them cutting across them? You'll see them so much. They space the field so much against Maryland. Like they spread it out so much, and they dodge from way up top, cutting across that middle of the field. Just trying to dodge to the dirt, right towards that middle of the field, cutting to get that shot off, right towards, kind of like dodge, kind of 12 o'clock, right at the top, to get that shot, or, right at, the top of the wing, get downhill and get a shot. That's really what they're doing. And, Maryland, which, always, they only slide. Maryland only slides when it's about takeaway. That puts them in a different position. They kind of more often have to slide against Notre Dame to protect, because Notre Dame has so many guys who you have to slide and support to, because they're great athletes. That's the question, I think, is how can Maryland's deep defensive midfield crew hold up? If they hold up, I think Maryland wins the day, because I don't know that Chris Cav just has more on his plate now with Pat Cav going. We always talk about, it's one thing being, going from a great 1B or number 2 to number 1. You can do it. I think he will have an awesome year. I think he'll be a first-team All-American. But it asks somebody else to step up into a different role. And you've got Brady Piccone, a freshman, who I think will probably have a great career, but he's getting a really tough assignment in an experienced 4th or 5th year guy in Canfield or Burles. We saw it last week. He had a tough game against Georgetown, experienced defender. That's different than having Pat Cavanaugh out there. It's different from Notre Dame had last year with having Pat Cav and have Dobson, those two out. We talked about, they were able to pressure you from every part of the field. Now, a little different. But if Notre Dame can win these matchups, if they can dodge and have success, then yeah, I think they're going to win. On the other end of the field for Maryland, I really liked what I saw. Maryland's playing a lot of guys as well. They had a freshman, Jack Schultz, played number 5 last week. He had 2 goals. Hayden Aiken, he had a goal. That's kind of like their more speed kind of midfield group they've still got the bigger midfield group out there with Noah Armitage. Checked out Stobaugh as well. Kind of plays this guy's. He's got a big shot. I think if you're Maryland, you need to press and see if you can find a matchup you like. See if, again, Notre Dame is, Georgetown was able to find some success on different guys. Notre Dame has 3 strong shorties in Alakwa, Ramsey, Tyler Buchner coming over from the, play on the football team. And obviously mentioned they're breaking in 2 new polls. I like what Maryland's done, in that it seems like with these, these middies, and it seems like they're if they're body blowing, they did Syracuse and kind of did Princeton of, when you deliver body blows, but if you find a matchup, you find a guy you like, go at him and see where we can apply a pressure point. I think that's what you need to do with Notre Dame. You can't play Notre Dame. Notre Dame is with Syracuse and Princeton especially. They are defenses that will come to you. Like they'll play aggressive and they'll make mistakes through that aggression. And so that means you can play off that aggression and you can pass it through them. Notre Dame is not going to do that. You need to kind of go at them and find where the weakness is. So I think Maryland is I think they need to go at somebody and see if you can run by them. Go find who the guy is. Now, maybe it's not there. Maybe it's not anybody. Yeah, Notre Dame's got, I don't know if they're as deep at shorty maybe as they were a year ago. Maybe they're not as good. But look, they got 2 new starters at close defense. To me, what that says is get somebody on them and run at them. That's kind of what Georgetown did. They kept Georgetown volume shooting. We kind of made joke, but they took a lot of cracks at it, and it allowed them. It gave them opportunities. They kept running at guys. So I think that's look, you're not going to get it at Light. You're not beating Sean Light. You're not beating Will Donovan. Everyone else on the field is a go. Ben Ramsey's a great player. Locke was a great player. All these guys. But Light and Donovan, okay, we're steering clear of them. But everyone else, I think, run at them, see what you can get. And if you can have success, all right, then we got something. And the beauty thing Maryland plays a lot. They're playing a lot of guys. They're a deep team. You can throw different options at them. You can move Erksa to midfield. So you can run Erksa out of the box and see if you can get Erksa on a shorty. You can play this young midfield line with Schultz, who's a freshman, Aiken, who's got speed, or you can bring in the big guys and just say, all right, run these big guys, downhill and rain some shots from outside. But I think you can't quite, against Syracuse and Princeton, they could play slower because you knew eventually Syracuse and Princeton are going to come at you and make mistakes. That's what they do. They're aggressive. Notre Dame is not going to beat themselves. They're not going to make mistakes. If you want to run the shot clock down and kind of let Notre Dame, we fine with letting you do that, and they're not going to do it. You got to find something against Notre Dame to take advantage of. And so I think I think they'll do that. I think there is I think they like the fact that they have a lot of guys they can play, and I think they like the fact that Maryland's offense is, I think it's versatile this year. They can put guys a lot of different positions. Matt Keegan and Bryce Ford are both former attackmen at their different schools. So if they need to, they can put those guys at attack. Spanos and Erksa both played midfield before. If they need to put Spanos in midfield, they could put him in midfield. They have options to kind of flip their offense around and attack. But I think they need to be – I'm not saying Maryland is go crazy and, try and be Carolina, but you need to be a little more, forward-minded how you're, thinking of play some early offense, attack early in the shot clock. Go after them first, force them to kind of make the move.
Find the weakest link and attack it relentlessly.
Yeah.
Keith, you want to pick some games?
Yeah. Let's